everyone, Charlotte here from Enriching Environments, and welcome to Top Tip Tuesday on Tuesday the 1st of February. And this evening we are going to be talking about physical behaviour in toddlers. So pushing, hitting, biting, all of those, and as we're going to discuss, normal toddler behaviours that are really unnerving to us as parents, and really unsettling to us as parents, and can make us think that we're doing something wrong, or there's something wrong with our child. And as with lots and lots of other parenting things, it's always our response which makes the hi there everyone who's joining, it's our response that makes the difference. Whether it's, sharing that we talked about last week, or physical behaviour, or tantrums, always our response is what makes the difference from our child coming into a place where they can succeed. And that's what we're going to talk about this evening. So please excuse my croaky throat. Wiggly is here, the Enriching Environments cat, just next to me, having a little cuddle, having a little stroke. And I think we can dive straight in. And don't hesitate to stop me if you have any questions as we go through. And so, physical behaviour in toddlers. What we're going to cover this evening is why it happens and why it's normal. What's going on for the hitter, for the biter in these episodes. How to support them when it's happening, and in the short term, in the immediate moment, and how to support in the long term in terms of a broader a framework in which to support our children. And we're going to talk about how it develops empathy, how it really develops empathy for us. And so let's dive straight in. Toddlers hitting, biting and pushing, kicking, grabbing, all of those things. These are completely normal toddler behaviours. We see them in toddlers because they are coming into a stage where we call in Montessori the crisis of opposition. So they are becoming aware that they are their own separate person, separate to their mother. And during this time, we know that we hear the word no a lot. And no doesn't mean no in opposition to what we're saying to them. No just means I am a separate person. So they have to, it's an innate biological need, they have to resist what we are asking of them. And even when they really want something, this reflex of no can come out. So it's nothing to do with us. We mustn't take it personally. And then this moves into lots and lots of other toddler behaviours, like tantrums, as we talked about last week, not wanting to share, not being able to share. And the physical behaviour is a really important one, because what can happen to us as parents, and it certainly happened to me as well, is you go from this really cute, sweet baby laughing, playing, and probably in a stage where likes being around older children. So we'll happily have toys taken from them. We'll happily give things up, share, and seeming like they want to share. And then in the toddler years, from maybe 18 months onwards to about 3, there's some physical behaviour can come in. And this is a subject really close to my heart, because my son Harry, this time 3 years ago, as I said in my post, this was the world of pain we were in with Harry. He was a biter. He was a biter for 4 months, and it was during the original Enriching Environments group. So that's the group of homeschooling families that we set up here in Dubai. And the worst thing is that Harry would just bite one of the other children, and only in this child's house as well. And it was one of my best friend Carla's, her son Hani, that Harry would always bite. And it was only in certain scenarios when certain other people were around. So it was super stressful. It was very, a very close-knit group, and we were, really good friends. And because we were such good friends, in a way, it made it harder, because you could end up seeing all perspectives of the story, all perspectives of what was going on. So it was super stressful. And there were times that I dealt with it well, and there were times I dealt with it not so well. And let me first tell you, so that gives you a bit of a background of why this is such an important and a heartfelt topic for me, because this isn't something that I'm just teaching about, that I've read about. I've experienced it, and I know how hard it is, and I know how stressful it is when your child is the biter. So yeah, let's backtrack a bit and talk about why it happens. Let me have some tea. Why it happens and why it's normal. So, children's brains are not as developed as adults' brains, as we all know. And so a young child has no prefrontal cortex developed. That's problem solving and reasoning. And that does not develop fully until age 24. So they are not going to be able to rationally think things through. They are not going to be able to rationally think of the words to say or how to behave in a stressful situation. In addition to this, they do not have developed impulse control. So if there is a stimulus that triggers them in some way, that makes them upset in some way, they will have a visceral reaction to that. And for some children, that can be hitting, biting, grabbing, things like that. Hi, Ivana. Great to see you. And so it's completely normal, all of this behaviour. And that's for us to know that even if our child might be the only child in the playground doing it, or the only child at playdates, it's really, really normal. You know, in the classroom environment, I have had biters before, and it's very difficult in a classroom environment because, of course, it's close quarters as well. And it's a super stressful situation. So we mustn't be too hard on ourselves, and we mustn't be too hard on our child. It's nothing that we're doing wrong, and it's nothing that our child is doing wrong. There's nothing wrong with our child. It is a normal stage of is a normal occurrence, and it's a stage of development that the majority of children pass through within a few months, maybe maximum 6 months, unless there's something else going on. If there's something underlying, hi, Satam. If there's something else underlying, then of course it may prolong. But generally speaking, this intense period of hitting, pushing, biting, grabbing, those type of things, it's a short period of time, because it's a specific period of time which correlates to impulse control, undeveloped, and language. Language is a really, really big factor in this subject, because the main reason that this type of behaviour peters off after the age of 3 is because the language skills have come in. What are between 1 and 3 years old, our children know what they want to say, they know what they want to do. Often they're not able to do what they want to do because they're tiny humans and we have to restrict them in some way, or their environment isn't set up in a way that promotes autonomy, and they don't have the language skills. You know, they see a child playing with their toy, and instead of, you know, sauntering over there casually and saying, oh, that looks really interesting, that's actually my yellow lorry, so I'd like that back now, they go over and they hit and they snatch, and then the other child with the yellow lorry may then, in retaliation, turn and bite because they don't have the words to say, actually, I'm working with this at the moment, please give me a few moments. You know, when we put this type of adult language to it, it sounds really ridiculous, but that's really what's going on in the child's brain. And that's what I want us to understand, that our children do not have the capacity to speak in a rational way, in a considered way, and problem solve in the way that we do as adults. And so this, the hitting, the biting, the pushing, this all comes out naturally. The language skills aren't yet there, and that's why it's such a heightened period between the age of 1 and 3. The other things are going on, the crisis of opposition, the undeveloped impulse control, the lack of prefrontal cortex for problem solving and reasoning. They can't share at this stage, as we talked about last week, and the language isn't there to explain what their frustrations are. And often it can be a build-up of frustration. It's not something that's just literally that moment. It can be something else that's going on. Perhaps where you are is noisy, perhaps that they're tired, perhaps that they're hungry. And of course, because they're little, they don't realise these signals yet from their body. So something else comes in to bother them, And the immediate thing is retaliation. You know, for a lot of children, a lot of young children, loud noise is too much sensory stimulation. So that can cause physical behaviour. And certainly with my son Harry, I've noticed that. You know, still he's almost 5, but if we're in a very noisy place, he gets really stimulated, he gets stressed, and he can lash out, even now at almost age 5. So it's completely normal. So that's why it's happening. There's a lot going on. They don't have the language skills to convey what it is that they need, or convey what they like or that they don't like. So the immediate, it's literally a reflex response, is to hit or to bite. So that's what's going on. And next we're going to move on to what's going on in the child's body when this actually takes place. So we know that these are reflexes. The next thing for us to know is they're not doing it on purpose, and they actually feel a huge sense of shame when they do this, when they hit, when they bite, when they kick, when they push. The way that we were sort of brought up probably was that a child should be, punished and reprimanded when they've done that, because we need to show them the difference between right and what's right and what's wrong. And of course, we need to help them understand that this type of behavior hurts others, but our real work is to not project anything onto them. So we can't put them in a position where we're shaming them for this, because shame isn't going to help us move through it. What helps our children move through this stage is empathy and repetition. But if we are saying, why did you do that? Or, blaming them, or saying that they're naughty, or use any of these sort of blanket terms that are really disempowering for children, it's going to prolong this period, because they have such a sense of shame when this happens. They know on some level that they have hurt their friend or the other child. They know on some level that it isn't right, but it's literally a way of looking at it. It's their brain sort of malfunctioning, as it were, in that moment. It's short-circuiting, it's fusing in that moment, so that the fuse is being blown in that moment. So then shouting at them afterwards, or putting them in a timeout, or any of these sort of corrective measures that we used to really see a lot in parenting, were very, very fashionable. They aren't going to work in the long term. They just bring more shame in, and they don't actually help develop empathy and sympathy in our child, which is actually big picture what we really, really, really want. What we really, really want is to help them develop the skills they need to move through this stage, and at the same time having empathy, knowing that having empathy for them, we know they're having a hard time, and that's where they're biting, and also having empathy for the child that they have bitten as well, letting them see and understand and know that the other child is crying because they're hurt, or the other child is upset, or the other child is now having a hard time because they've been hurt, and all this without shame. We don't need to bring shame into it, but it's part of supporting our child in the big picture rather than trying to correct actually in the moment. And so I know what one of you is going to ask next. So how do we support? The main thing that we can do when we have a hitter, when we have a biter, when we have a pusher, when we have a kicker, any of this physical behavior, is we've got to stay really close. And that means that there may be scenarios where that play date you don't have for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. If it's happening at the same place, at the same time, with the same people, it's best if you avoid that scenario. Because if they're not succeeding and the other children, the other child isn't succeeding and getting upset, then it makes the adults nervous in the environment. And this is what happened in enriching environments as well. Like, we all became really on edge about the biting, all of the adults, and then that didn't help either. It made the situation more stressful for the children. So we can be really, really mindful of what energy we're bringing to the situation. And sometimes it's going to be that, if there's a play date in the park and there's always an issue with sharing toys, and there's biting that goes on, then it may be just for a couple of weeks, give that a miss for a bit, just so you can rebond with your child, and we don't put them in a situation that they can't succeed. And that's really important in the bigger picture for Montessori, actually, is that we try not to put our children in positions that they cannot succeed, in situations where they cannot succeed. And so this is one of them, you know, if they're having a hard time with biting or scratching or pushing, whatever it might be. And I did this with Harry when we had enriching environments. So in the house, in my friend Carla's house, where he was pushing and biting, I took him out of that session. When her son Hani came here to my place or to the other hosts, Harry was absolutely fine. There wasn't any biting happening. But in the situation that he wasn't managing, which was Hani's environment, and he was biting him, or I suppose a little bit of pushing, but mainly biting, then I just took him out of that scenario, because just for a couple of weeks, and it passed. So that's the first thing we need to do. And if we're in situations where, you know, we can't get out of it, then we need to stay close. We're not going to be able to maybe sit and chat like we used to before. We're not going to be able to be at a distance and observe their play. If we know that they're going through a difficult stage of physical behaviour, the best thing we can do is stay really, really close, so that we know that we've got our child's back, and our child feels that we've got their back. And that's a really, really powerful place for us to be in, and for them to be in. We have some more tea, and then let's go back to shame. So when this happens, when these incidents happen, when we're going to say no shame and no blame, what we're going to do is straight away, when something like that's happened, you want to see the innate goodness in that child, in your child, whoever's child it is, and you're straight away going to say something like, oh, I know you didn't want to do that. That must have been a big shock. And then try and verbalize what they were trying to do. Oh, you didn't want to share the car, did you? Or you really, really wanted that book. Or the music's really, really loud in here. Or it's really, really loud in here, isn't it? I wonder if that could be upsetting. You know, try and verbalize what's going on for your child, for the child in front of you. That's really, really important. They're going to feel seen, and they're going to feel heard, and they know that what they did was wrong, and they don't want to be doing that hitting. They don't want to be doing that biting. But if we can show that we are on their side, we see their innate goodness. So something like, I know you didn't want to do that. You didn't want to hurt your friend. I know you didn't do that on purpose. Even though it can seem that they did do it on purpose, even though it can seem that they're taking pleasure in it, because some children will laugh afterwards because there's that nervousness after they've done something, you know, which will be perceived really bad, they didn't want to do. And often, and Harry does this still, he'll laugh afterwards, even though, you know, he's just hurt someone or he's broken something or what have you. So that nervousness, we mustn't confuse that with something malicious. It's literally the child's nervousness in that situation. So we don't want to take any shame or any blame in there. The words are something like, I know you didn't want to do that. You didn't want to do that. That wasn't on purpose. I know you don't want to hurt your friend. And then if you need to, you might hold them to keep them safe. You can say, I can see you're having a tough time at the moment. I'm going to hold you to keep you safe. And if they are really out of their skin and they might want to go and hit or bite or someone else, that's when we'll need to hold them. You know, we need to hold them and just reassure them that they're safe, and reassure them that, you know, you've got them, basically. You're not going to, because they're so out of control and they feel out of control, and that's why they've hit and that's why they've bitten or whatever the behaviour is. What we can do is help them feel that we're back in control, not in control, in charge. We're back in charge, you know, and that we've got them, and we're not going to let them get out of control again. It's very scary for them to be in that place where they are being very physical, they are hurting others. They don't want to do it. They see the reaction of other children. They see the adults' reaction. We must see what we can do to make them feel super, super safe, so that they don't need to lash out again. And of course, the lashing out's unconscious, but it's all part of building this bigger picture. So stay really close. When something does happen, see the innate goodness in your child or the other child. Straight away, you can say, I know you didn't want to do that. I know you don't want to hurt your friends. And then, of course, we've got two things to do. We've got to look after the biter, and we've got to look after the child that was hurt as well. And then we can use that to develop empathy. Say, your friend is crying. Let's see what we can do to help. So we can get them a tissue, we can get them a drink of water, we can get them an ice pack, and we can talk through what happened. And this is really important in a non-judgmental way. Oh, I think she's crying because she had a bite. She received a bite. You bit her because you felt frustrated. Always explain what's going on. We don't want to put any blame on either child, but we want to explain what's happening. And then other children will listen to what you're saying and hear what you're saying and feel this respectful approach as well. So, and that in the classroom, that's really, really valuable, because any lesson, anything that I talk about in the classroom, then there's so many other little ears listening and so many other little eyes watching. So this is a really good opportunity, particularly if you're in a public space, to role model how we respond compassionately, how we respond in a really, really loving way in difficult situations. So that's about developing empathy, seeing how the biter can help the other child, can help the injured child, if that's the right word, to feel better. You could say he's crying now. I can see he's upset. Let's take him a tissue and drink of water. Shall we find an ice pack? His arm might be quite sore where you bit it. Let's do that together. All of this collaboration in a really beautiful way, and really not having any shame. And this response might seem very, very light and might seem very, very not enough, given the circumstances. But this is what the picture is that builds up over time. And also the other thing about staying close, when we stay close, we see what happens just before a bite. We see what happens just before a hit. So we get really, really, really in tune. And then we can sort of step in when we can see our child isn't managing or the child isn't managing. And that means that they will, if we're stepping in, we're stopping the bite happening. So it doesn't become a pattern of behaviour. So that's the other reason to really, really stay close. We're supporting them so they know we're there, but we're supporting physically so that we can block. If we need to block with a hand, then we can. If we need to stop what's happening, we can. We stay really, really close. So I think we're time for our recap. If anyone has any questions, then please do enter them now. Otherwise, we can recap. So, hitting, biting, pushing, physical behaviour. The reason it happens is that there is undeveloped impulse control. The prefrontal cortex for problem solving and reasoning isn't yet developed. Language hasn't yet come in, and this is a huge part of the 1 to 3 year old group. Most of the frustration comes around in this age group, whether it's tantrums or sharing or this physical behaviour. Most things happen because the children do not yet have the language to be able to say what they want. They understand everything, but they can't convey what their needs are. So hence, there's a lot of frustration that builds up naturally. They're in a land of giants where no one is understanding what they're saying. And it must be immensely frustrating for them. So it's all normal behaviour. It's a combination of not being understood because of the language development, and it's a combination of the prefrontal cortex not being developed, problem solving and reasoning, and there's also the fact that the impulse control is undeveloped. So what's going on for the hitter and biter? In these scenarios, the hitter or the biter is out of control. They don't want to be doing it. They're not doing it to be naughty. It can become a conditioned response if it goes on unchecked. But broadly speaking, it's just a normal stage for a lot of children. And that little child, when they are biting or hitting or doing this physical behaviour, it's for us to know that they are out of control. So we need to be they're calm. We need to be grounded, and we need to be 100% in support of them. See their innate goodness, see what their struggle is, what happened just before the bite, what happened just before the push, what provocation, what trigger was there, because then we build this picture so we know before, okay, maybe we need to leave this play date 15 minutes earlier because we know that this is a stressful situation and they're going to bite when it gets to 11:30 or whatever it might be. So adapt according to your child. Just observe your child, see what happens at different times, and then you can act accordingly. And so how to support when this is going on. So really stay close, stay really, really close, particularly in shared spaces, public spaces, in other people's homes, play dates. The times that you know that it happens, be aware of those. When your child is tired, when their child is hungry, when there's too much light, when there's oversensory stimulation, all of these things can contribute to helping our children manage their emotions and lessening these episodes of hitting and biting. So stay close, as close as is possible in these COVID times, and know that our child is doing the best they can. If they could do things differently, they could. The only reason that they are lashing out in this way is because they don't have the language skills and their brain isn't mature enough. There's nothing else to it. They're not doing it deliberately. But what we want to do is give them enough support so it just breaks this habit. And for most children, within 4 to 6 months, it passes this intense physical stage. And it moves and shifts, of course. But it's a really intense stage where it's quite stressful if you have a hitter or a biter. That doesn't last long. And lastly, this helps us, and I found it for me when my son Harry went through this. It helped me to develop so much empathy for him and his experience, so much empathy for the other child, and so much empathy for myself, because I was stressed and I was worrying what I'd done wrong and all of these things. But I know from my training that this is normal. We do as much as we can to support the child with language development and showing them in different ways how they can meet their own needs so that level of frustration doesn't come up. So empathy, in the end of it, empathy from us to our child and the children, and empathy that our children see us role modeling. Because if we're not shaming or blaming them when they're biting in this way, when they're hitting in this way, the times, I love that quote, is that the times our children are the most unlovable at the time are the times that they need our love most of all. And that's exactly such a great example of it here. They seem unlovable because they're hitting and biting and making a nuisance and children are crying, but that's when we need their love. We need to give them love and acceptance more than any other time. So I hope this has been helpful. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And any more topics for Top Tip Tuesday, please do send them via DM. I love hearing all of your messages, receiving all of your messages, and I love hearing your ideas for Top Tip Tuesday, and keep in touch. And I have my nanny program and my conscious parenting program, the next intake of students starting this month. The early bird discount of $110 is valid for both programs, and you can get that online. The early bird discount is online. So until next week, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a really beautiful session, and I'm so glad that loads of you were able to join. I think most of you have come off now. But thank you so much for joining, and don't hesitate to drop me a line if I can be of any help. I'll see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.